Alright, welcome back everybody. Today I've got a video on the Glock Classic series. I have one each of the Glock P80 Classic Edition and the newer Glock 17 Classic. I just got the Glock 17 Classic today. I already did a video on this today and unboxed it and everything, and basically the video just got screwed up, so I'm having to start all over. And so I'm not opening this for the first time, but it is close to it. Anyhow, picked this up at my local gun shop today. I had them order it for me. Seen that there was still some around at the distributors, and they gave me a good price on one, so I bought it. Picked it up for probably around 30 bucks less than a new G17 or G19 cost, so I think they're a pretty good deal. They don't have all the doodads and rails and finger grooves and stuff that a newer one has, but I really like the Gen 1 style, and I've wanted one for a long time, so that's why I have these. They are limited runs from Lipsy's. It's a distributor. I believe it's 10,000 on this one. They were made. I don't remember what year they came out, but I want to say 2021-ish or so, maybe 2020, of the P80. And then the Glock 17 came out in 2023. I believe it's also Lipsy's and was 10,000 on that one. This one is in the 9,000 range, so it is. They are probably done with production, and what's out there is what's out there. I'm assuming they're stopping at 10,000. I haven't read that, but I would assume these are both limited. They both come with this nice packaging. A little bit differences in the packaging between the two, obviously. The history of these is the Gen 1 frames are different, and they redid the molds to make these. The P80 is supposed to represent the very first Glocks that were issued to the Austrian military, hence the P80 designation. Those are not available in the U.S. to the best of my knowledge through surplus or anything else. I could be wrong, but if they are, they'd be super, super rare. And then the G17, Glock 17 Classic, is supposed to represent the first, five years or so of Glock Gen 1 Glock production, probably 3 years, I don't know, something like that, before they changed over to the Gen 2 frame around I guess 88, 89 or so. Anyway, the differences between the two guns are very minute. Basically just roll markings is the main difference between these two guns, and the packaging. Otherwise they're, for all intents and purposes, identical. We'll get into them real quick here. I'll go ahead and just open them both up at the same time. They have the nice magnetic boxes that have the flip top. The difference is this one's got a pull strap. The P80 does not. You open them up. They come with packaged very similarly. You got the P80 has a certificate of authenticity from Glock, showing that it's a limited release. And then the safety manual and stuff and the paperwork on this one, which has not been opened. Picked this one up used at the same gun shop several years ago. The only thing I think it's missing is the trigger lock, which who cares about that. The differences is there's a little bit of differences in the printing. I haven't read those yet, but that's a difference. Anyway, that's the P80. And the P17 has the Glock 17 is the same thing. Certificate of authenticity. Safeguards, unopened. And trigger lock, and there, now they're both the same, minus the trigger locks. Anyway, open up the boxes. They come with a internal box as a representation, I will say, of the original boxes, although it's not identical. I believe it's a Gen 3, early Gen 3 box. Put them open. The only difference on those is the sticker for the civilian market, civilian one. This is a sticker they used to have on all the boxes back in the day, probably up until the 90s, I would imagine. I remember them being around, seeing these a lot back then. Then get into the guns themselves. The P80, they both, you know, they're both based on the Gen 1. Looking at the P80 first. It is marked Glock P80 9x19 on one side. And the serial number and the Glock logo on the barrel and the frame. Serial number underneath with the nice first gen grip. Near as I can tell, it's almost identical to the original first gen grip. I think the Glock logo is up a little higher from what I've seen in some pictures. It is a 1-pin frame, just like the original gun. Same on the G17. The profile underneath the barrel is a little bit thicker than on my Gen 2. Not much, but a little bit. I don't know if it's as thick as an original Gen 1, but it is a little bit thicker than a Gen 2 by a hair. I've noticed them be a little bit fatter underneath there. Other than that, it's typical Glock. These come with new manufacturer mags. I do have non-drop free mags in there because I have a bunch of non-drop free mags from way back when. Want them to look more original, but the gun comes with 2 magazines, cleaning brush, cleaning rod, loader, and basically that's the difference between a newer mag and the non-drop free. Is the non-drop frees don't drop free when they're loaded, they stay in the gun, and they have a sleeker profile on the bottom. They don't stick out as much. U.S. civilian market did not like the non-drop free mags, so eventually Glock went to the drop free mags. They're still out there, but I think they're starting to get to the point where they're starting to command a premium. Anyway, I keep both of these. Keep non-drop free mags in them. I just think they look a little better. This one doesn't have it yet, but it will. Anyway, typical Glock safe action, right? So not really much to say about that. The differences between the repop and the original, I can't say much on the P80 because I've never handled one. So, I mean, I just have to go with Glock on that. I believe that they're as close as they can get and keep them priced accordingly. Also, the new guns come with a captured recoil spring like later Gen 2s and up. The originals had a non-captured spring. The other difference, obviously, is going to be the Glock Smyrna, Georgia on the side of the P80. It obviously wouldn't have had that because it never would have been imported to the U.S. But anyway, that's the P80. The G17, same thing, comes with 2 modern magazines, which is what this one still has in it, the drop-free mags. Also, captured recoil spring. All the markings are the same as the original one. One thing I did notice, which doesn't surprise me, is as far as the differences between a repop and original, is the early ones of the G17s and the P80s are going to have, at least the earlier manufactured ones, are going to have a pencil barrel. These have the more modern, thicker barrel in them. And at the ejection port, there is a slight slant machined here, where on the originals, and I have a second gen here to compare. See how this one here has a slight angle on it where this one's straight. So that's another difference I've noticed between the originals and the modern repop. That is pretty much, I'm going to say, is pretty much all the differences I've noticed between these manufactured guns and the originals. I'm sure those that are really into Glocks might point out a few extra things that I'm not thinking of here, but are noticing yet. Differences between these two guns. These are obviously, they're the same gun, just with different roll marks, but there is, I'll show you where the differences are. So the serial numbers on the P80s, I believe, are just in the regular series, where they have a 3-letter suffix or prefix, or 4-letter prefix. and a 3-digit number, where the G17 is in its own serial range. It has a suffix of a Gen 1 on it, as you'll notice in this one. Also, the slide markings. You'll notice the P80 does not say Austria on it, which for obvious reasons. The gun was made in Austria and was issued there. They wouldn't need to write their own origin on it, where the U.S. manufactured guns were going to have Austria on them. The barrels are marked a little bit differently, not much. They're basically the same with the exception of the P80 having a P80 mark on the top of it where the G17 does not. Otherwise they look identical. And the packaging, that's really the only differences between the two. The finish and texture on everything is almost identical between the two. They're both typical. I mean, they're pretty much both flawless. I mean, I would expect from Glock. They do have the more what I would call traditional finish that you would have seen. I'm sure it's not the same process, but it's very close to the original finish. You notice here on my Gen 2, there's not much difference between the finish styles, although this is probably brand new. Obviously, this is brand new, and this is 35 years old at least. This gun is a 1990 gun, so... But anyway, very good representations of a Gen 1. And significantly cheaper than buying one, unless you can find one for a really good deal somewhere. I will say the finish is a tad bit darker on the P80. The light's kind of making it look worse than it is, but this one does look a tad bit lighter finish. Put them both up next to each other. They're pretty damn close. It might just be this one's got a little bit more oil on it. Disassembly is typical Glock, very easy. Take the mags out and make sure the gun's unloaded. And then what I usually do is I just pull the slide back a little bit with my hand up here, push down on the takedown, and the slide, oh, sorry. Let me start over. You got to, you know, release the striker, pull the trigger, and then pull back on the slide, push down on the takedown, slide comes right off. And like I said, you'll notice the spring is captive where the originals would have been non-captive. Other than that, it's just the usual on the Glock. The internals, I'm told, are Gen 3. I don't know the difference between originals and Gen 3 internals. I think they're interchangeable. I know the originals would have had black internals, but a lot of them were upgraded later on to the more updated internals. As far as reassembly, just make sure your front guides are in the slide slots properly, lined up on the back ones, then you just, that's it. Can't get much easier disassembly than a Glock. Anyway, that's pretty much the gist of this classic series. Hope you enjoyed the video. If there's something that I missed that you think needs to be added, please feel free to add it in the comments. And I appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the video.